I'm 38 years old, I earn 50 grand a year, and I am completely broke. Now listen, when I make these kind of videos, first of all, this is not about me. When I make these videos like I'm 65 and retired with no money, or I'm 38 and completely broke and make 50K a year, these are stories that other people have about themselves that I'm going over here in the video. So just to make that clear, in case some people didn't realize that. Because people write in these stories to different financial experts and try to get advice on what to do. And so I'm going over their scenario, the advice of the experts, and then also throwing in my 2 cents as well. That's kind of like the format of these type of videos. And it seems like you guys seem to enjoy them, and I enjoy it too. So here's this guy's situation. 38, completely broke. He's got a bachelor's degree, and he only makes $45,000 to $50,000 a year, and his bachelor degree is in humanities and social sciences. I didn't go to college. That doesn't sound like a very lucrative degree. He goes, with inflation and costs of childcare, I really regret not getting a professional degree right after my bachelor's degree when I was 22. He says, I'm willing to put into extra 4 years of school and use student loans to pay for it, and I intend to work nights while in school so that my student loan debt is almost zero by the time I graduate in my early 40s. But what this guy's looking for is he wants to put the extra years into his schooling, get his bachelor's degree, and then he wants a guaranteed 6-figure paying job when he graduates and gets his bachelor's. And basically his question is it going to be worth it to do this? You know, can I do this? Is it the right financial move? The one thing I got to hand it to the guy, at least he's willing to take on student loan debt and actually pay it off. He's not looking for a handout from the government, at least that's what he says. But here's the advice from the experts, and of course I'll give my opinion as we go through this. Obviously there's no get-rich-quick schemes, there's no get-rich-quick jobs out there. I mean, you're going to have to go to school and you're going to have to work your way up the ladder. For example, even if you get your bachelor's degree and you enter a field that could potentially pay 6 figures, the odds of you starting with a 6-figure salary are slim to none. So even after the 4 years and you go ahead and enter the workforce again with a new career, doesn't guarantee you a 6-figure salary. And the thing is, there's no real type of job out there that says you get the degree and then all of a sudden you're making a 6-figure salary the next day. That doesn't really exist. Like for example, an entry-level attorney with less than a year of experience can expect to earn an average salary of about $64,500 a year according to payscale.com. So even attorneys, you know, high-powered ones easily make $250K a year or more. But just starting out, you're looking at maybe 65 grand a year if you're lucky, guys. And even when I hear these numbers as an entrepreneur, it kind of reinforces and makes me happy with the idea that I didn't go to college, because going to college would have been such a huge waste of time, energy, and money for someone like me. And I've been able to make a lot more money than this without going to college. But some people don't have that drive. Some people don't have the ability to start a business or the self-direction in order to move forward in life without, you know, somebody always cracking the whip behind you or telling you what to do. And that's fair and understandable. And that's when people should go to college and probably should get a sustainable career. The other expert advice to this guy, which I highly agree with, is, you know, you shouldn't be choosing a career just based on the fact that it pays 6 figures. Like, yeah, that's nice, but if you hate your job and you're going to be miserable for the next 20 or 30 years working at this job, then really what kind of life is that? They also say here, as some expert advice, is to watch out for these for-profit colleges that guarantee you a job with 6 figures upon graduation, because no one can really guarantee you anything. But that's their marketing hook, that's their sales hook, right? They're saying, well, come to school here, get this degree, and we guarantee you we'll get you a job. And I even remember 7 or 8 years ago, there was a lot of coding schools doing just that, not even colleges, but coding schools that would teach you how to code, you know, all the different computer skills. And the tuition was quite high, probably like 50, 60 grand, maybe even 100 grand. Once you're done, they said, we'll guarantee you a 6-figure job. And if you don't get the 6-figure job, then the tuition is free. That was kind of the marketing hook. And I'm sure there was some caveats and some, you know, asterisks in there and the small print. but that's their marketing hook. So it's very compelling for people who are desperate to get a new career and to start earning more money. I don't know about you guys, but I'm super happy to be back walking along Biscayne Bay once again, seeing this beautiful turquoise water. And honestly, the weather feels kind of like it did in the Bay Area right now. It's cooling down in Miami. It's like 78 degrees today. Beautiful. Anyways, my 2 cents on this would be, for somebody who wants to make 6 figures a year and your idea of making this happen is to go back to school for an additional 4 years, I mean, personally, I think it's a bad idea. And the reason why is because there's so many different opportunities out there today that you could take advantage of, whether it's starting your own business or becoming a tradesman in some way that also earns a high salary. Those things can be done a lot quicker than 4 years. And then even after that 4 years is over, you might still not be earning the 6 figures according to the college experts. So I would be doing a lot of research online, talking to people you know who make 6 figures for a living, find out what they do and how they do it, and start looking at different options that can be more of a fast track to getting to that 6 figures a year rather than going back to school. Because also remember, even if you are lucky enough to make that 6 figures right out of college, which isn't very likely, but let's say you do, now you're graduating with all that student loan debt and you're saying you're going to work nights and do all this stuff in order to catch up. But that just sounds miserable. Why not keep working your $50,000 a year job and find a side hustle that you can do and turn into a 6-figure side hustle? That's what I think is the most practical solution for somebody like this. But if it must be in the education field and you have to go back to school to do something that you really want to do, that's one thing. You know, people have their heart set on certain careers that do require a degree, and of course there's no getting around that, then you got to do it. But if it's solely just about the money and it's not about advancing your career into something that you want more instead of what you're doing now, I think you're better off finding a side hustle, starting your own business, or getting into a trade that pays 6 figures. I mean, go check it out, guys. You'd be surprised what plumbers and electricians and people like that in the skilled trades earn. It's actually very lucrative, and you're going to be able to be trained and get into that field a lot faster than 4 years. And probably for a lot less money too. And people need to start earning more money, not because they really want to, but out of necessity, guys. Like, there's even a strong argument now where if you really look at how much money it costs to live in an expensive area like here or other expensive areas across the country, 6 figures is just barely enough now. You know, one thing we can look at is there's a few major signs that America's debt crisis is growing right now, and it's only getting worse because the Federal Reserve always puts out these reports talking about household debt, okay? The most recent one shows that in July, August, and September, household debt has been on the uptick and is now sitting at almost $18 trillion in total. And this is overall household debt. It includes everything like mortgages, home equity loans and lines of credit, student loans, credit cards, car loans, and other types of debt like store credit cards. Mortgage debt alone rose by $75 billion, and balances on home equity lines of credit also rose by $7 billion. And the reason for this isn't just because houses are more expensive than ever, it's also because people are borrowing more than ever against their houses in order to keep up with this ever-increasing cost of living. Some people are saying, well, I'm not going to go back to school. I'm not going to get a side hustle to make my 6 figures. I'm going to use my house to make 6 figures and keep borrowing against it until I can't anymore. The problem is, one day the piggy bank runs empty. But the Fed is saying, well, don't worry about it because, you know, the income growth is actually keeping ahead of the debt among American households overall. They're saying our collective debt to income ratio stands at 82% compared to 86% in 2019. The problem is they just average out everybody all together, guys. They look at household debt and they look at everybody's income and say, well, the debt to income ratio is better now than it was in 2019. But the problem is the debt has gone up to an exponentially higher amount, right? But most people's incomes have not. but some people's have. You know, some people's wealth, assets, and income have exploded so much over the past 5 years that it's enough to skew these numbers and actually make the debt to income ratio look better than it really is. When they do these calculations, they should exclude America's top 10% of the wealthy and just look at the bottom 90%, and I guarantee that will paint a very different picture. And there's two groups of people that are falling behind the most right now. Obviously, lower income people are falling behind, but also younger borrowers between 18 and 29 are showing the largest amount of financial distress, with a higher percentage of them holding debt that's past due 90 days or more. But here's some of the things that people are falling behind on. This New York Fed report shows that delinquency rates rose in the third quarter across all different debt types, okay? With 3.5% of all outstanding debts in some stage of delinquency, which is up from 3.2% last quarter. That's a big change in just 3 months. And delinquent debts are categorized as payments that are 30 days past due or more. And so these delinquency rates have been steadily rising over the past couple of years. That's not a coincidence. How can they look at the debt to income ratio and say, well, everything must be great because, you know, the debt to income ratio is at 82% today when it was 86% before? Yeah, but for who? Not most people. That's not the reflection of what most people are experiencing. This report also outlines the fact that credit card and auto loan delinquency rates are now higher than they were in 2019. So this is a problem that is steadily getting worse. And the most worrying part of it is more and more of these credit card and auto loans are moving into serious delinquency territory where they are 90 days or more late. I mean, if you're 90 days or more late, the chances of you catching up or actually making a payment are probably slim to none, and that's why they'll repossess your car or shut off your credit cards at this point and send you to collections. I mean, look at that story from Alan. I told you guys the other day, he works for a debt collection agency and they're busier than ever right now. He said that they're so busy that they have to hire more people right now in order to keep up, as well as the fact that they're sending people home and making people work from home because they're out of office space. In fact, 90-day delinquencies also rose across all debt categories from just 1 year ago. And these serious delinquencies are highest right now in the credit card debt category, which is sitting at 11.1% in the third quarter. The credit card debt crisis is something that continues to get worse. And the only reason for that would be that people are using these credit cards to live, to pay for expenses that they used to be able to afford with a salary that no longer can cut it. And also the amount that people owe when they go to collections now is also hitting a record average high of over $1,700. This is how much people typically owe when their accounts go into collection. So is that really a sign that most consumers are doing well right now and people are financially strong? Of course not. But people are caught in this vicious cycle of we need to keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing because it's the only way to actually keep up, in order to actually keep paying the bills. And of course this isn't everybody, but this is a good chunk of the population right now. Americans added $24 billion in credit card debt over just the third quarter of this year, guys. $24 billion, think about that. That's up about 8% from just 1 year ago, and now we're pretty much cracking 1.2 trillion just now. I remember it was a big headline last year when we crossed the $1 trillion threshold. We've now blown past that, just like the federal government's blowing past crazy past deficits like it's no big deal. Quick side note, I want to show you guys something. I've been coming to this park ever since they've been building this building. Now it's finally done. It's giant, as you can see with the other ones next to it. But they're having a hard time selling these units, guys. Take a look at this one I saved on Redfin a long time ago. They've had this place listed since July of 2023 for $1.42 million. Still hasn't sold, okay? It's been a year and a half almost this place is on the market. It would cost you about $13,000 a month. The HOA fees on this place are $3,300 a month. And guess what? That's just for an 878 square foot, 1 bedroom, 1.5 bath apartment in this new luxury building here in Miami Beach. Who's buying this, guys? Well, clearly nobody. Nobody wants a 1 bedroom for $1.4 million. But this is all they build now. And that's considered cheap for a new luxury building. No wonder people can't afford anything. But going back to the credit card debt, it's really hard to get out of this, mainly because of the interest rates. Once you start going past the point where you can't pay off the credit card balance in full monthly anymore, then you start accruing interest. And with the average interest rate at 22, 23% on these cards, I've seen them as high as 36%. I showed this in a recent video that somebody sent over. And when you're accumulating that level of interest every single month on unpaid balances, it makes it near impossible to get out of, because think about it, you already couldn't pay the bill before, and now it's like someone is continuing to use your charge card even if you're not using it. That's what the interest is. It just keeps building up regardless of whether you use it or not. The Fed also pointed out that there's a worrisome increase in credit card delinquencies, and the first 3 months of 2024, we've had delinquent credit card balances hit a 12-year high. Well, what happened 12 years ago? People were in financial ruin back then. That was right after we had the 2008 financial crisis. People were still picking up the pieces from that. I mean, the American debt crisis is so bad right now that most Americans now are saying that they expect to die with debt. In fact, 55% of Americans right now are saying they expect to pass on debt to a loved one when they die, according to a recent survey from debt.com. Oh, how nice is that? You know, Aunt Mildred just died, and now I'm going to be inheriting some of her debt. What? I remember when I was growing up as a kid, people always wanted to see if they could get a big inheritance, like from a rich uncle or something like that. Well, I just came into a financial windfall, and now you're more likely to get the bill rather than an actual inheritance. In fact, in 74% of the cases, the amount of debt that people expect to leave behind is at least $5,000. So a minimum of 5 G's, maybe more, depending on how much of a spender Aunt Mildred was. So what actually happens when somebody close to you dies? Will you actually inherit the debt? Well, it kind of depends. There's a few things you have to look at. The first thing is, depending on what state you live in, the laws can be different. So that's one thing. And we're not going to get into all of that, but we'll go over some different types of debt that actually can be inherited, which is the most common types. Now, in general, when someone passes away, their debts are usually paid by their estate. And any money that's still owed past that, a lot of times the creditors could be out of luck, with a few exceptions. So the first thing is a co-signed loan. If you co-sign a loan with somebody and they pass away and your name is still on the loan, you're still going to be on the hook. That shouldn't come as a big surprise. A lot of people probably already realize that when they sign on the dotted line, but this could be a lot of different things. You know, it could be an auto loan, could be a personal loan, could be a mortgage, could be even a lease, an apartment lease. They say one of the most common things that people actually forget about is private student loans. These loans are almost always co-signed by the parent of the student borrower, and if the borrower dies, the parent could be liable for the remaining debt. Now, obviously, losing a child is probably one of the worst things that can happen to any parent. But on top of that, to make it even worse, if you sign for a student loan, then you're going to be stuck with their debt as well. The next one is jointly owned credit cards. If you have a credit card with somebody else, your name is on the account, and they die with an outstanding balance, guess who's going to be getting the bill? That's right. Now, there is a caveat to this also. If you're just an authorized user of a card and the primary card holder dies, then in that case, you will need to stop using the card immediately, but you won't be responsible for paying off the balance that the person had when they passed away. So if you have a joint credit card, this also applies to children. Like, I remember when I first started using a credit card, it was, my parents put me as an authorized user on one of their cards. So for example, if they would have passed away back then I wouldn't be responsible for that. But make sure that if you share a credit card account with anybody, if you're actually an authorized user or a joint account holder, that will make a huge difference in the event of a death. Another big one is inherited property. If you inherit a car or a house that hasn't been paid off, you are responsible for continuing the payments on the loans. Houses can be foreclosed on, and cars can be repossessed if you don't pay. One thing I'd be curious to know that it doesn't really explain here, but say for example, you inherit a house or you inherit a car that's not paid off, then if you don't pay it off and you actually lose the house in foreclosure or lose the house in repossession, is that going to go against your credit score or the person who's deceased? Because I would think it wouldn't go against your credit score if that property isn't completely in your name if you end up not paying. But that's kind of weird legal gray area. I don't know if anybody out there has the answer to that, but I would assume if the asset hasn't been fully transferred over to you and you're not the full legal owner yet and you don't pay, then that's not going to hit your credit. It will hit on the person who's deceased, which obviously won't matter anymore. Now, what about if your spouse passes away? Well, in general, you shouldn't be responsible for your spouse's debts, but there are some exceptions for that as well. And aside from everything we just mentioned, you could be liable for what's called community property debt. In the states that have community property rules, debts that are incurred during the marriage are generally both people's responsibility by default. So if one spouse dies, creditors will try to collect from the surviving spouse. And right now there's 9 states that have community property rules. It's Arizona, California, Idaho, Louisiana, Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, Washington, and Wisconsin. If you live in one of these states and you don't have a prenup, then a lot of the debts incurred during the marriage, regardless of who took out the loan, could also be your responsibility. Now, one last thing I want to address is the community post I put up the other day was extremely helpful. I really appreciate everybody who voted on this. It was very helpful. I asked you guys, what kind of videos you wanted to see from me moving forward, specifically when it comes to the frequency of my posting, as well as how long the videos are. And the vast majority of you, 54%, say you like my schedule exactly like it is. And right now I'm putting out 6 videos a week religiously. I've been doing it for 2.5 years with literally no break. Very few people want to see more videos but shorter, so that's probably not going to happen. But 31% of you said that 3 to 4 longer, more in-depth videos would be better. So I'm taking all this into consideration because I really value your opinion. After all, I make the videos for you. And a lot of you guys were concerned in the comments, I read through a lot of them, about me getting burned out doing this and basically working too much. So pretty much my plan moving forward is I'm probably going to stick with the 6 videos a week, but if I feel like one day that I want to make a longer, more in-depth video about something that might take more effort than putting together these news videos, I might do that. Then maybe there will only be 4 or 5 videos that week. Or if I feel like there's just something that is not that interesting to talk about, because for a while, from a lot of the comments I've seen in the past, I was thinking that most people, they rely on me to find out all the latest news of what's happening in real estate and what's happening in the economy. But sometimes that news isn't that interesting, but it's still news. It's just not, groundbreaking, right? So from what I can gather, most people would rather just not see a video that day than have me make a video anyways. So I'll just kind of be doing this at my discretion from now on. If I feel like there's something interesting to talk about, I'll make the video. If I want to make a longer video that ends up being a banger on the channel, maybe the next day I won't post a video. What to expect moving forward from me is pretty much the same that I'm doing now, but you may end up seeing 1 or 2 less videos per week on occasion, depending on the week. That's what I think I'm going to do. And I think that's going to be the right mix for me and for you guys moving forward. Because at the end of the day, I just want to make videos that you guys are interested in watching every single time. So if you enjoyed this one, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here. And I'll see you in the next one.